everyone, and welcome back to our Golden 20s podcast. My name is Tegan, and I'm joined with my co-host Sadie.
Hello.
And we are back this week, and we're talking all about friendships in your 20s, specifically making and maintaining friendships. But before we dive in, we are going to do a super quick connection card. And I believe this is the last week we are doing a card in the green category. So things are just going to get deeper and deeper from here. So the question is, name something you've achieved that you're proud of.
I feel like we've had this one before. Maybe not.
I feel like we have too.
And if I remember correctly, I feel like both of us said getting out of our small town. Is that what you remember or no?
I remember talking about the day I got engaged and that some work that I had worked on, I got served as an ad. Maybe it was like your proudest day or something, but it is a very similar question.
Okay, interesting. I remember that now that you're saying it. But I think for me, my biggest accomplishment in like all of life is just starting my own independent life in Toronto. Grew up in a very small town, and I always just was like dying for the day to get out of that small town and live on my own, have my own job in like an industry that didn't even exist in my small town. I just knew it would be like when my real life would start, if you will. So I think that's probably my biggest accomplishment. And then obviously within that is smaller accomplishments like living on my own and my career, like so many career accomplishments I've done, even like going to college and graduating from college, which was my gateway out of my small town into the city. I think, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty aligned. Like maybe just like my life with my husband Tyrell, because it's like we did the university and the college together and like moved to the city together, started work together, that sort of vibe.
Yeah, great. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Well, let's dive into friendships in your 20s. I wanted to start off by saying that studies have shown that having a strong social network can actually increase your lifespan. So obviously, I feel like everyone wants to have friends. Everyone wants to maintain friends, but it is actually good for you. It's healthy. And so I just wanted to start with that because I know it's so hard to prioritize friendships, especially in your 20s. Like, I know we've talked about this in episodes before. It's like hard to figure out what to prioritize. Should you be prioritizing your career, your relationship, your family, figuring out who you are, like your solo time, your friendships? And I don't know. For me, I feel like friendships are the easiest thing to neglect. So I wanted to say we shouldn't neglect them. They're good for you, and we should try and maintain them.
Yeah, it's so funny because I'm like one of the last single friends in my friendships, and my friends are now reaching a point where like it's not like new and exciting relationships that they're anymore. It's like long-term committed relationships. And literally I've talked about friendships with all of these friends because for me, like my friendships are my everything because I don't have a partner, right? So it's like I literally like I love my independent life and I focus a lot of my time and energy on my career. Like that's really been my priority through my 20s. But close second to that is my friendships. And my friends who have prioritized relationships in their early 20s, now in our late 20s, they're like, oh my God, I don't have any friends. Or, oh my God, I've realized I don't actually like my friends. And I feel like all of my friends who are in long-term relationships are like, okay, great. I found like my partner, which was number one mission. But it always comes back around to, okay, great. I have this person, but I still really want and need friends. And I think especially female friendships, I think we've talked about this in the past, but you just get so much emotional support out of your female friendships. And to be honest, any friendship, I just think you have a different bond with your friends than you do with your family and than you do with your partner. And you can just talk to them about different things or they relate to you in different ways. Like I think, yeah, I guess just like ways that maybe there's a topic you and your partner don't see eye to eye on, or your partner doesn't want to hear every single detail about your work day, but your work bestie does, So I feel like even if you're not prioritizing friendships now, there's probably going to come a time in your life where you do want to prioritize it. And I feel like this is just as relevant if it's now or later that friendships is that priority for you.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say, as far as like making friends before we dive into maintaining friends, that I feel like we get asked this question a lot when we do Q&As. And so we've got a couple other episodes about it. But the main thing is that sort of the dating rules apply to making friends as well. So it's the same idea of like, you have to put yourself out there. And whether this is like trying new things, just being open to chatting to people, doing activities alone so that you're sort of like forced to talk to people, all that stuff I find is the key to sort of making friends as an adult, saying yes. Like if you're invited to a party, go to the party. If you're asked to join a soccer team, join the soccer team, whatever it is. I think that's the key to making friends. Obviously, like you make friends probably through work and things like that. But outside of that, I think that that's the easiest ways. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Say that we have lots of episodes about that in the past as well. But then we can dive into the like maintaining friendship part.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that, where it's like those dating rules, how to meet like a partner apply to friendships. It's like there's apps to meet friends the same way there's apps to meet partners. Like, yeah, all of those things where it's like show up in spaces and have your light on. We've talked about that in a past episode, like showing you're open to talking to people and like getting to know people, and you're initiating conversation with people you are attracted to or like want to become friends with. That's the joke in like my family is all of my friends I've like hunted, all of my best friends I've hunted down and was like forcing them to be my friends. Where I was like tagging first day of kindergarten, it's like, hey, let's be friends. One of my other childhood best friends, I knew she lived on my street and she moved in grade 3. So in grade 4, I was like, this girl is going to be my friend because she lives right down the street from me. So I literally like stalked her home from school like for a week. And then I like worked up the courage to be like, okay, we're going to be best friends. And then we were, I was the maid of honor at her wedding. She now has 2 kids. Like, it's just so funny. Even like my college roommate, I was in like a college roommate portal where you got to talk to a whole bunch of people that kind of like matched you, and then you could like talk to people based on your matches and decide if you wanted to be roommates with them or not. And there was one girl in particular that I was like, I want this girl to be my roommate, and lo and behold, she was. Again, I was a bridesmaid at her wedding. Like, it's just so funny, but that's the attitude you have to take with it, is like initiate it, and then not saying stalk people and force them to be your friends, but if you really want something, you'll find a way to make it happen.
Yes, 100%. And like we said, all of this applies to dating because probably your partner's going to be your friend as well. So there's a lot of crossover there.
Yeah, I feel like people just are so determined for dating. Like girls are like, I am not giving up until I find him. We're friends. It's like easier to push it off, where it's like, no, if you take that same determination into your friendships, you will find friends. But anyways, all of this being said, Tag, I think like you were saying, the biggest thing we wanted to talk about today is about maintaining friendships, because I think that's a whole other ball game. And that's the part that becomes really tricky through your 20s, because great, you make all these friends through elementary school, high school, college, but then keeping those friends when you're post-grad and building your life and going through the next phases of life, if that's finding your partner, getting married, having kids, whatever it is, you'll likely find anyways, in most cases, your friend group starts to shrink. So that's why you start looking to make new friends, but it's like, how can I maintain the friends that I already have? And I feel like Tegan and I are so qualified to talk about this because we have been friends for so freaking long. Like I said, literally the first day of kindergarten we met, which was like I feel like going on, 25 years? Yeah. Maybe in September? Like, absolutely wild. So, I don't know. I feel like we can maybe just shed some of our examples, I guess, through this, because I feel like too, we haven't always been like super close best friends, but we've always
Mm-hmm.
been consistent friends. And then we'll go
Yeah.
through phases where we're like super close. Then it's like, okay, whatever. And then now I feel we're in a phase where we do like everything together. We're like super, super close, mainly because of the podcast, we talk all the time.
Yeah.
But, like we're in this phase of like being super close. And I don't know. After 25 years, I just think that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's crazy to think about. You're like my longest relationship outside of my like actual family,
Family.
which
Yeah.
they're forced to
Yeah.
be in that relationship. They don't
Yeah.
have a choice. So
So wow.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the first thing I feel like some of this stuff will sound obvious, but I also think for some people listening, you might be like having an aha moment. So if you're hearing any of this and you're like, yeah, no, duh, girls, just know that there's someone out there who's like,
Who
this is
needs to
going to
hear
be a
this?
light bulb moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So the first point we had written down was you need to be a good friend in order to have good friends. And it's like you need to, friendships are a two-way street. I can't count the amount of people who are like, oh, like you never see me anymore. And I'm like, well, yeah, like you never message me. Like, what do you want from me? Or
Yeah.
friends who are like, you haven't even seen my apartment since I moved and it's been a year. And I'm like, well, yeah, you have to invite me over. Like, I can't just show up at your
Exactly.
apartment. You know what I mean? Like, all of these friendships are a two-way street. And so you have to be the one to put yourself out there sometimes. And I get that it's scary because it is like putting yourself out there. There's the chance of rejection, but that's how you maintain friendships.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I've actually struggled with this a lot as my friends have entered relationships where I'm like, I feel like I'm being a really good friend for them and I'm always there for
Mm,
them, but they're not
yeah.
always there in that same capacity for me. And that's
Yeah.
something we're going to talk about in a minute more about that. But I feel like I try to be such a good friend, but then I know that the friends that I have in my life are really great friends because of that. Like not only do I
Right.
kind of like curate the people in my life where it's like I know who I want to spend my time and energy on, I feel like
Yeah.
all of my friends who are currently in my life reciprocate that. And it feels mutual, like I'm
Yes.
reaching out, asking Tegan how her day's going just as often as she's reaching out to see how my day's going and things like
Yeah.
that. So I totally agree. I think the other big thing for me that I make a very conscious effort to do is ask my friends about their life and like genuinely care and want to
Yeah.
know rather than just using our friendship as a like way to talk about myself and my problems. It's like we all want to talk about ourselves, we all want to talk about our problems, but for a good healthy relationship and like to be a good friend, you need to be there for your friend just as much as you're talking about yourself. And I feel like a part of that, this is maybe one of those obvious things, but again, I'm like, trust me, a lot of people need to hear this. Like, if you're like, why aren't my friends, initiating to hang out with me? It's like maybe they're just tired of hearing you just talk about yourself all the time. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it needs to be like a little bit of a check for you to see how good of a friend you're being to them. But
Hmm.
another example of this could also be like how well you listen. So, of course, asking questions about their life and caring, but like also taking the time to listen because I feel like a lot of the time in my friendships anyway, people just need to vent and just like need somebody to listen to them. And if you are somebody who's again approaching some like a conversation because you're like genuinely interested in what's going on in their life, you genuinely care, it makes it a lot easier to listen and people really like that goes a really long way. So even if you're like, I don't ask my friends about their life because I don't give good advice. That's okay. You
Mm.
don't need to give advice. You just need to listen. And I think part of that too is being there for people, regardless if it's good or bad times in their life. And if it's like we're saying, they need advice or they're maybe celebrating something or just need to rant, whatever it is. I think being there for them regardless and not just picking and choosing when you're there for them is definitely like another really key part of being a good friend.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a few other things that came to mind for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think related to that, being a good friend, you're also there for them like during good times and during bad times. And you're like equally supportive in both. Like I know some people who like don't do well when their friends are having successes, where
Yeah.
obviously it's like a reflection on them, but they have a hard time being supportive in that moment, or vice versa, where I know people who are like, they want to be there for the big moments but not the hard moments. And like true friendships, I think, are a mix of both. Like you're there when your friend's sad, when they're having a shitty time, when they need help, when they like ask you to come paint their apartment, but then you also get to be there for like the weddings or the birthday parties and like the fun stuff. It's a mix of both, and you can't really pick or choose. And I find that in those moments, that's where like true friendships are revealed. Like if you're going through a hard time, it's like, okay, who's actually here to like support me and help me, and who can lift me up and not just be like, oh, we're not just gonna have a fun time, well, I don't want to hang out with you, you know. So that's sort of a part of it as well. Another thing I had written down, which again is obvious, but I'm gonna say it: if you get a partner, don't shaft your friendships, because like partners come and go, friends are forever.
Spice Girls say it best.
Exactly. So yeah, you know, it's obvious, but don't make everything about your partner either. Like it's okay to have time away from them. It's okay to be like, do you want to go get dinner, no partners, and just have like a girls' night out or whatever? Like try to keep space for both, or be like, I want you to meet my boyfriend, you bring your boyfriend, we'll double date, whatever it is. But it's like you have to carve space for both. And then when you're out with your friend, don't just talk about your partner, because again, it's like, oh, you're just talking about yourself. Should be obvious, but I'm gonna say it anyways, especially when you're young and you're really excited about your partner. It's easy, I think, to fall into the trap, but that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, be fully present when you're together. Make an effort not to be on your phone, not to be thinking about, you know, I'm going to go home to my boyfriend or whatever it is. Like if you're making the effort to go out and hang out with your friends, actually hang out with your friends. Be present. If you're watching a movie together, like watch the movie. Be in the moment, because that's also key. It's not enough to just like show up and then you sit on your phone. You're like, well, I sat in the same room for 4 hours. Like, nope, sorry, it doesn't count.
Yeah. The number of times I've been at a restaurant and there's like two friends sitting at a table near me and they're just both sitting on their phones, like either showing each other things or just like, I don't know. I'm always like, I don't know the full context here, but it just feels so bizarre to me, because that's very much it. When I'm out with my friends, my phone's on do not disturb. Like, you know, I'm invested in what they have to tell me and like talk about, and I'm excited to like share whatever's going on in my life with them as well. So I think that is definitely a big part of it, just being present.
Yeah, I think the last thing we had written down in this sort of category is to remember and celebrate the things that are important to them, because everyone's like important things are different. And so I feel like it's easier to celebrate the things that are made big by society. So it's like it's easy to show up to the wedding because you were invited and you're like, okay, well, I better go. Or it's easy to show up for the baby shower because the same thing. But if you have a friend who doesn't value those things and those aren't important to them, you should be showing as much love and joy around things like if they got a promotion at work, if they finally adopted the pet they wanted to get, if they like got their driver's license and that's what they really wanted. Like all of these, it's about what's important to them, not what society dictates is important. And so I find that that can be a sticking point, especially through your 20s. If you're like a single girl like Sadie being like, well, I just showed up to your wedding and spent this, and now you're not even going to come to my birthday party. Like, you know, you have to be able to prioritize things that are important to your friends as well.
Yeah, 100%. I can't wait for my 30th birthday. I already have like the theme planned. I'm going to make this a big fucking deal. And it's one of those things where it's like, this sounds so selfish, but it's like, yeah, I've been a maid of honor how many times, a bridesmaid how many times. And it's like, just because I'm not in that phase of life yet doesn't mean I don't deserve to be celebrated, you know? So I'm like, I'm going to have a big 30th birthday party and that'll be my moment. So that is what I'm planning. But I completely agree. And I think that kind of takes us into our next point, which is around adjusting your expectations. And this sounds really mean, I'm not going to lie, where it's like, maybe you're just asking for too much. You know, this is
Mm,
so adjusting your expectations is something that I've been working on in every single area of my life. And I've been working on this with my therapist. She kind of like brought it to me. And at first I was a little bit offended for that exact
mhm.
reason, where I was like, wait, now you're saying that this is all my problem, that I'm
Right.
feeling frustrated with certain things. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
what the point of this is maybe you're expecting, maybe you're almost letting yourself down because you're expecting a lot from other people for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And they're not trying to disappoint you, or they're not maybe even aware that they're disappointing you, but you're internalizing this because you've set like an expectation for your friends without even like communicating it to them or something like that. And this again could go in your relationships, anything like that. But I feel like the easiest, and why I thought it was the perfect segue, is because knowing everyone is on their own timeline and tackling these life phases at different times, like we were talking about, I feel like being mindful of that and then adjusting your expectations based off of that can really help you accept where you're at with certain friends. And I feel like for me, going through my 20s as a single girl, as my friends have gotten into relationships, started getting married, and all of those sorts of things, it's like I need to adjust my expectations and like understand where they're at and how this does impact our friendship, and like how, yeah, it could be little things like just adjusting expectations around like if how free they are in like a month kind of thing, where it's like, oh my god, you're
Right.
booked every single weekend, but it's like, okay, but now it's they have two people's calendars to try to like coordinate, you know, like just trying to
Yeah.
understand the other side of things, and then realize if you're expecting something unrealistic from them given the life phase that they're at. And then I think just also in the whole life phase thing, I talked about this actually, I think in one of my like solo episodes, one of the like recent solo episodes I did around being single. And I was saying how it's so much easier to relate to people who are in the same phase as you. So it's easier for me right now, to
Mhm.
relate to my single friends who are also in their late 20s and 30s, because
Yeah.
they understand how that's different from being single in your early 20s
Yeah.
versus Tegan, like, you know, you might find it easier to relate to other couples who are married or engaged or going through their first home buying journey right now, because
Yeah.
that's the phase of life you're in. So it's like, you know, there's certain things that maybe I adjust my expectations, and like certain things that Tegan and I do and bond over, but I know I bond over that with a different friend because I relate
Yeah.
to that friend, you know, on different parts. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm starting to lose
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Where it's like you can have friends for like different parts of your life where I'm like, I don't want to be the friendship who's in, or the friend who's in a group of single girls and being like, oh, married life, blah, blah, blah. Because they'll be like, okay, girl, like, who cares? Shut up. Like, why are you telling us this? You know what I mean? But then it's the same with like, if you're in a group of people, like you said, who aren't, I don't know, homeowners, and then you're like, God, homeowners, and they're like, okay, like good talk, I guess. Like I have nothing to add to this conversation. You know, it's like you can
Yeah.
have different friends for different things, and you know, everyone has their own things they're working on. And I also think that this makes it so that I'm like, there are certain friends I see more than other friends because, like you said, everyone's just on their own little journeys, everyone's on their own path. So it's like there are some friends that I see a couple times a year, and I'm good with
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'm like, I get my fix. That's all I need. And then there are other friends, like people like Sadie, that I text like almost every day. And it's like, that's good for us. So I also think that it's okay to be like, some friends, you know, I see them when I see them, or like we're mainly a text friendship, or we're mainly like an in person friendship. When we see each other, it's great. But through the rest of the year, it's no big deal. And actually, one of our first episodes we ever did was about like how you know, like your friendships are over or something, like how to know, like in your 20s, like you can move on from friendships and stuff. And I feel like if you're someone who's like, all of my friends are leaving me, like I just left university, now I don't see them, go find that episode because I think it was a good one. But I also think a big part of friendships in your 20s is knowing when it's okay to walk away. Like knowing when, okay, this friendship, it's probably ran its course. We were there for each
Hmm.
other when we needed each other. We don't need each other now, and that's fine. But that is sort of a part of growing up. And I still have lots of friends my age who, when I'm hearing them talk about their friendships, I'm just like, why are you still friends with that person?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, because, well, we've been friends forever. I'm like, that's not a good enough reason, you know? But it is a big learning, I think, in your 20s to be like, maybe it's time to like let the friendship die. It's time to walk away. I'm no longer maintaining this friendship. So that's another key thing.
Yeah. You touched on so many things that I was thinking about as well. The last one being how I feel like we cling on to friendships even when they're no longer serving us just because we're so used to
Yeah.
having those people in our lives. So it
Yeah.
is okay to just walk away. I think that is good advice. I think another thing too is knowing not every friend, and you were kind of implying this, Tag, but not every friend needs to be your best friend. You know, like I
Yeah.
feel like when we're kids, it's like very like the popularity contest is about like quantity of friends, and then it's also
Yeah.
like, but so and so's my best friend, and like
Yeah.
you like wear that title of a best friend with pride, and like everybody feels like your best friend, especially in like a
Yeah.
small town setting, you know. But I feel like it's okay if you have those friends that are like work friends, casual friends, those like friends who know absolutely everything about you, or the friends you would call to like bury the body kind of thing,
Yeah.
like it's good to have different types of friends, and you can like adjust your expectations that all of them need to be a super close friend who know everything about you, remember like all the important things in your life, and remember like your mom's birthday, or random things like
Yeah.
that. Like you probably only have one of those friends if you're lucky, like I don't know. So that kind of came to mind when you were talking, Tag, about like the friends you text and only see like a few times a year. Like they're
Hmm.
maybe not your best friend, but they're still a friend.
Yeah. I also think that small gestures are underrated in maintaining friendships. So it's like, yeah, I only see this one friend once a year, but we text all the time. I think that's valid. Even just like sending people like memes on Instagram, or like commenting on people's Instagram pictures, leaving them like a voice memo, giving them a call. Like these little things, for some reason, they aren't seen as like as impressive in the friendship scale as hanging out with someone in person. But I feel like they're just as valuable, if not more, in maintaining a friendship. So I wanted to mention that as well.
Totally. I feel like you're kind of touching on something that I was thinking about, where just like how to keep in touch with long distance friends specifically. And that's something I feel like comes up again as we like move out from our hometown, go to college, then we maybe graduate from college, move wherever a job opportunity is, or move to be with your partner if they get a job offer, you get a job offer somewhere. Like I just feel like people end up all over the map. And I feel like people feel like they can't be best friends if there's that distance between them. And maybe that's the case. But for me, like one of my sisters is my best friend in the entire world. Like literally probably my soulmate. And we only see each other probably like 3 times a year. And she's like blood. So it's like you'd think we saw each other all the time, and we have that like makes us best friends. But
Yeah.
really, it's just because we voice note each other like 5-minute voice notes multiple times a day. And like we're
Mhm.
texting all day, every day. When we do meet up in person, either I go visit her, she comes visits me. Usually we try to do that like, a few times a year. And then, of course, I see her like family get togethers around like Christmas, Thanksgiving, things like that. But I'm like, she's my best friend. But we've just found, those small things, like those good morning texts or how's your day going texts. Like that's what our friendship is basically based off of. So just wanted to call that out as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think, sort of related to how you spend your time with your friends, you will probably find that as you get older, the way that you maintain friendships might change. So I find that, like, through school, you're friends with the people who, like, live close to you because you're just like friends because you're all in the same thing together. And then I find, like, through university, a lot of friendship activities are like, let's study together, let's go to this party together, let's drink together. And obviously, as you get older and your priorities change, sometimes those friendships just like go away. And it's okay to try and come up with like alternative friendship activities, because I know like a lot of people say if they like stop partying or they get sober, it's like some friendships like completely disappear because you only hang out with that person when you're going out or whatever. And it can also be really expensive if all of your friendships are maintained by getting dinner and drinks. So I just wanted to mention that as well, that like it's okay to be like, do you want to go for a walk, or do you want to do a workout class with me, or like Sadie and I are going cold plunging together tomorrow as our friendship maintenance, you know, like there's so many different options that don't have to revolve around like dinner and drinks, and even just like coming over and hanging out. I love a good like we're both gonna rot together, we're gonna like sit on the couch and watch a bunch of movies or whatever it might be. So that's something else I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I feel this is especially true heading into our 30s. Like, this is it where people are just like, I would love to just come over to your house and sit on your couch and gab. Like, I would love that. I don't need to like get all dolled up. And of course, those, don't get me wrong, those nights are still so much fun. But it's like, yeah, we don't need to be like hitting the bar at 10 p.m. and like getting shit faced together, you know, like that's not it anymore. I'd much rather get like wine drunk at my friend's house with them or something. So I feel like this is kind of, I had to go through those friendship times in my early 20s to get to enjoying these like smaller moments now. But I completely agree. It's all about the quality time, no matter what that looks like to you and your friends.
Yes, exactly. The last thing I had written down is, this is me being a loser, but think about your friends' love languages and use those to show your friends that they are important to you. So it's like, if they are struggling with something, help them with the tasks they are struggling with. Get them a nice gift for their birthday. Reach out to them and say thank you for the friendship, whatever it is. Maybe not physical touch. I guess you could give them like a hug or something. That's probably a little more relationship focused. But it's like there are lots of ways to show your friends that you appreciate them and you value them. And, you know, it's worth showing up and doing those things, because you can do all the friendship maintenance in the world, but if Sadie's inviting you to her 30th birthday and you don't show up and you don't bring a gift, like
you're cut.
You're no longer
you're
Sadie's
dead
friend.
To me. Tegan's like taking notes. Okay, got it. 30th birthday. I'm there.
Show up, Sadie's 30th birthday. I actually know a girl who, for her 30th birthday, she married herself, like somehow legally. Yeah, and so she would like, and I can't remember. It was like a wedding mixed with a funeral. Like it was a big, this girl, she was friends with Emma Stone and Jennifer Lawrence. So she was like a fancy girl.
So funny.
But because one of them was at this party. I only know her like through someone else. So she told me all about it. But I was like, damn. And she was like, I have a registry. I'm getting married. Like the ceremony's at this time. And it was like a whole big thing.
Wow. I love that for her. I will not make my 30th birthday that big of a deal, but that was one of the things. So my sister turned 30 a few years ago, the sister who's like my best friend. And her and her boyfriend have been together a really long ass time, but they don't really plan on getting married anytime soon. But all she wanted was a KitchenAid mixer. She was like, I want to get married so that I can get a KitchenAid mixer like on my registry, because it is expensive. And she's like, I wouldn't buy that for myself. So for her 30th birthday, my family was like, okay, we're getting you a KitchenAid mixer. So then that's why I was like, okay, my 30th birthday's coming up. These are the things I would put on my wedding registry if I was getting married. I'll send that list to my family and they can choose what they want to buy.
Yeah.
But I won't do that for anyone else. That is just for my family. So funny. But I love that. And even going back to the physical touch, one of my best friends literally gives the best hugs. Like the best hugs, where both of us are just like, let's just hug it out. Like it's very like Chandler and Joey, you know, and it's just like the best. So I do feel like there is a place for physical touch even in friendships. But anyways, the last thing on the list for me was to also acknowledge how busy everybody gets, which I think we've talked about quite a few times throughout this episode, but how that might mean you need to plan your get-togethers in advance. That might even mean plan your phone calls with your friends in advance, or it might mean, like actual in-person plans. I feel like there's like memes about this and jokes about this, and I feel like people always view this as like really annoying and inconvenient. Like, what are you doing 3 months from now? Maybe we can hang out. But truly, like, you need to do that, and you can't be like, this is ridiculous, I'm not doing this, because then there's likely going to be friends that you just don't see because they're so busy, and it's impossible to make plans if you're not making plans like multiple weeks or months ahead of time. So I don't know, just wanted to mention that as well. I have some friends where I'm like, really? Like, I can't see you, like, especially through the summer. That's where it's like people are on vacations, people are doing this, doing that. Christmas, it's the same thing where it's like, I have to see both sides of the family. We have his work party, my work party. Like, it's just impossible to see people, but you again need to like understand their reality and then take the bitterness off of being like, okay, I do want to see you. That's the goal here. It doesn't matter when it happens, but as long as we can commit to a time and place, let's do it. So wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because everyone's in different like life stages, like we said. Like, I have one friend who's been my friend since like the 7th grade, and we only see each other like maybe twice a year, but she's a nurse and she works night shifts. And so we have to schedule things like 3 months in advance so she can book it off. And it's like, it does feel like extra to be like, are you free 3 months from now? But it's like, that's the reality of the situation. Girl's a nurse. What can you do? You know? And so everyone's scenario is different. And as you said, like, once they get a partner, it gets more complicated because that's another person's schedule. Once they have a child, it's a third person's schedule. Like, it's just a lot. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I love this. I feel like the whole root of our podcast is all about like self-awareness and, you know, getting to know yourself. And we talk about so many different routes to do that and like things. But I feel like what kind of feels like an underlying theme to me in this episode is like, yes, once you get to know yourself, obviously you can like set goals and like improve your like quality of life and stuff. But I feel like it also really helps you be empathetic towards other people. And when you're empathetic towards other people and you know yourself, but you can also like understand your friends and what they're dealing with in their life and things like that, you can be a better friend, and that'll go a really long way. So I don't know, just something that came to mind while we were chatting, where it's like, I feel like this self-awareness journey that we're always talking about on our Golden 20s podcast leads into developing empathy. And that's like really the root of being a good friend and then maintaining friendships throughout your 20s.
100%.
Thought I'd tie it up with a bow to wrap up this episode. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you liked this episode. Like Tegan said, we get asked about friendships all the time. So it was about time we shared another friendship dedicated episode. But that being said, we do put out an episode every single Tuesday. So make sure you are subscribed and following us on whatever app you're listening to this on. You can also rate us and leave us a review. That helps us grow and reach new people and share our wisdom. So please do that. You can also find us on social media. We're at our Golden 20s. That's Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok. We have Spotify playlists. We're literally everywhere, albeit I haven't been posting very frequently on any of them, but you can find us there and we will make our social media comeback one day. And we are also on Patreon, which is the best way to show your support for the podcast. So if you do listen in every week, you can find all of our episodes early there. And they're also completely ad-free, which could be great, again, if you are an avid listener. But that is the end of my ramble. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Bye.